Hey man, waiting on Beccolo.
Oh, Beccolo.
Jean-Pierre Beccolo.
I haven't. I don't think we've met. Is he here?
No, he's in Paris.
Okay.
Yeah, he's in Paris. So, um, yeah, so you're out there on the water, huh? Okay, folks.
All the
Yeah,
pavilions.
I
I'm
remember.
in. I'm in the American pavilion, which oddly enough is the only
Mhm.
pavilion in Cannes that you have to pay for. Because
Well,
that says it all, doesn't it?
it's the American way.
Well, I mean,
It's
it's
the
you
American.
know that. So I was digging into this American pavilion thing because don't get me wrong. I mean, I've used it. It was worth what we paid for. But if you look, the rest of these are all these tents are pavilions, right?
Hmm.
All right. And so all those pavilions are pavilions that the respective they all sort of like we're right next to the Irish pavilion here, and then
Hmm.
there's the Greek pavilion over there, and further down there's the European Union has a European media creative media tent.
Hmm.
All the different countries have pavilions, and those countries are subsidizing those tents, those pavilions. But
Hmm.
the United States government doesn't do that. Oddly enough, there is an American pavilion, which is where I'm sitting right now, right, which you have to pay to be able to access. Um, and then there's the U.S. pavilion, and the U.S. pavilion is mostly for film commissions trying to get productions to come to the United States, shoot in
Hmm.
Canada, shoot in California, shoot in Michigan, shoot in Jersey, that kind of thing.
And you
So
better keep your passports.
And then the other thing I dug a little deeper talking to some of the people that work here, and turns out that the American Pavilion is owned by Penske. And for people who don't know, Penske's a billionaire. He owns the Hollywood Reporter, Deadline. I think he bought IndieWire. Um, he owns the Golden Globes. I think he owns the American Music Awards, the Country Music Award. All that stuff. And so the whole bag is that he is um, buying up these awards so that people buy ads in the magazines. So it's he, as my mother would say, he got them coming and going.
Hmm.
So yeah, the American Pavilion is financed by Penske. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Well, that's
huh?
interesting. So that's interesting. So let's talk about the wrap up. We're in the last day of con. So
Yeah.
what's
Um,
what's the lessons other than the billionaire monopoly of everything?
well, so there was an important lesson that I learned. Um, I guess after we last spoke, right? And that is, I had spoken about this on my Instagram. You can find me at VGBND on
Mm-hmm.
Instagram. You can find my company, Audiovisual Terrorism, all one word, on Instagram as well. But I had done a little reel about how I had come in 2025. I went to Berlin to the European film market. And then shortly after that, I went to MIP London.
Mm-hmm.
And then in October, I came to Cannes to do MIPCOM in Cannes. MIPCOM is, for those who don't know, is mostly television, trying to get distribution for television.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I had met people in Berlin. I had met people in London. I had met people here in Cannes. And when I came back, I must have been around December or so. I remember giving you a call. I remember giving Warrington Hudlin a call. I remember giving
Mm-hmm.
my co-producer Tony and Joe calls and asking them if I was doing anything wrong because I wasn't really getting any traction. Um, things just didn't seem to be working out, and there was a frustration level. And when I spoke to you all about that, you were like, "No, no, no, you're not doing anything wrong. You just have to keep showing up." And at the time, that didn't really sort of register with me. It didn't. I didn't quite understand it. And then I ran into this woman. here at the American Pavilion, actually, who I had met in Berlin, and
Hmm.
she has a distribution company in Oslo, Norway. Um, and she said something that really just sort of made sense, kind of sort of reinforced what you and Warrington and Tony and Joe were saying, which is that when I was first coming around on the scene, um, people were like, "Okay, that's cool, that's interesting, and all that." But um, she was saying people don't want to do business with somebody who shows up once. They want to make sure that you're in for the long haul. So now that I've seen folks, two, three times, people know that I'm serious, that I'm tenacious, that I've got the wherewithal, and so in the second half of the trip, I started to meet with people who I had met previously, and I had great meetings. I mean, really great, and I met a few new people. Um, Towards the end, things start to calm down a bit. The hustle and bustle and the insanity is sort of takes uh, gets dialed down, and it's easier to meet with folks who are still hanging out. A lot of the companies will break out. It was weird. They'll just break out like after 3 or 4 days, and they'll spend tons of money. Again, to
Hmm.
come back to our thing about, well, we can't afford this and we can't afford that. People are buying booths, and they're buying a booth, and they're putting, key art on the booth. Um, we met with this one woman um, who said that the booth across from her, those people have been gone since Saturday, and they paid $15,000 to put up their art on that wall,
Hmm.
and they were there for maybe 4 days, and then they
Yeah.
were out.
Yeah.
But there are people who still sort of hang around, and who are still here, and um, till the bitter end, as my mother would say. Um, and those folks, they have more time because they're waiting to see if someone like myself will come along and have a conversation with them. We had a conversation, what was it, 2 days ago, with an Australian distributor. The conversation lasted an hour and 15 minutes. That's not a pitch. You know what I mean? That's a conversation. A pitch is 10 minutes max, Um, but we had a long conversation where he was from, where we are from, trading stories back and forth, talking about film, talking about the projects and all that. And it was a good meeting. I felt really good. That day, we must have had about 4 meetings that were really, really good. Um, three of them were past each 40 minutes, 40 minutes and longer, you know. So I think people know that they've seen me. Um, as I like to say, I steal a line from Gil Scott Heron from his last album, "I'm New Here." He says, "I'm easy to get to know and hard to forget." So, uh, yeah, we've had some really positive meetings towards the end of the marche here, so that was
Mm.
good. You know,
Yeah. So let's talk about, let's talk about the real deal. Like what? Okay, so we had a really good meeting with our team
right,
because my goal was for you to meet our team people, so we could encourage them to help us with to help us publicize the film to the people that utilize their software.
right,
There's several thousand people who use it, and a lot of them are exhibitors, right? And being
right,
able to get in front of those, I mean, that's the hardest thing. I mean, when you don't have any money, it's hard to get to a lot of people. We live in clothes, we live in bubbles, and working outside of these bubbles is hard. It's like the people we meet live in bubbles also. The question is, if you meet another people in a bubble, will he spread, will he spread what you're doing to the people inside of his network
right,
or
right, right, right,
and so like and so these are the kind of relationships, especially for what we're doing. We don't have a distributor yet. Hopefully we'll be able to get somebody who doesn't want exclusive, because the thing about it is through Artini, we're able to put this film out to every type of theater and institution and community group or wherever you show us. We're at we're at a critical point where this subject is being talked about, the subject of the SSDIs and antidepressants, and there's a lot of misinformation being spread about that's coming from our own government.
Right,
But it's
but before we even go into that, right? Let's just talk about the fact that we're here selling a film called Legally Drugged. It's
yeah,
based on a real story, based on a real person. His name is Richie Schneeberg, and
mhm.
he spent
There you go.
3 years in and out of insane asylums
Mhm,
or mental hospitals,
mhm,
over prescribed and misdiagnosed, right? And so we made a film about that. And so Richie, after he came through that ordeal, um, he became an advocate for more stringent prescriptions, using these prescriptions more sparingly, shall we say, right? Because I remember sitting down with Richie before we even shot, and he was saying, he was completely against all these anti-depressant and antipsychotic medicines, and then he had run into, I think the story was that he had run into a Holocaust survivor in Miami, and they said that they that these medications kind of sort of helped them, and so hopefully he sort of changed his mind on it, that saying that maybe in limited cases this could be a big help. So
yeah.
just to give us context as to what we're talking about, that now that's a big thing on the scene now, is that these drugs, do people need them as much as they are prescribed? Because they're probably given out like candy. So
Yeah. So so when you talk, so what else did you talk to the our teeny people about?
about sort of like publicizing, you wanted to get into them about publicizing stuff. I was
Hmm.
talking to them about more technical issues. My co-producer Joe was talking about more technical issues. Um, I they're the way that the way that I understood what Artini was doing is that they're trying to be an alternative to what we call DCP, a digital cinema package. And so every film that you see in a theater that is projected digitally is projected using a DCP, a digital cinema package, right? And so it's on a hard drive, and you it's a particular format that theaters use to screen films. Artini is trying to be an alternative to that. That particular software, that particular technology of DCP has been around for maybe like 18, 20 years or so. Um, it's very difficult to make a DCP. It takes a long time if you don't have the proper gear. It costs a lot of money. The file size is massive. Part of these things, part of the way that you put this DCP, the reason you put it in that package, in that format, is to keep people from pirating things. And then, I would assume that it has uh, some use in terms of that, because it's sort of the standard. It's the global standard. And so Artini
Hmm.
is going up against them in terms of trying to be an alternative to that DCP and making things um, easier for folks to be able to access films and screen them wherever, in a theater, in an alternative space, on the street, however it may be. So I admire the fact that they're creating alternatives. Because I mean, it's great to have standards, um, but what usually happens is that those standards then become a monopoly, and then you're stuck, sort of locked into everything. So those were some of the things that I had learned about Artini, that I didn't know about before. The easiest way to explain what Artini is doing is trying to be an alternative to DCP, but also on top of that,
Well,
um,
yeah, that's some,
allowing
yeah,
access to
yeah,
theaters and other
yeah,
institutions to screen films
yeah.
using their software.
And we cut out the middleman, because why? Because of how we get paid. We get paid,
Right.
right? We can go through somebody else. It comes directly. It comes directly to us. I mean, like that. That's the whole thing. You know, our trip to Cannes this year is about finding partners creating partnership, finding exhibition opportunities, and just networking. Just
Right.
meeting. I remember how surprised you were when I met Paul, and told Paul what we were working on when I was working with him when I came to New York, and I was working on the Miriam Makeba documentary. And I told him about the film, and he remembered seeing the film. And you were surprised that he remembered seeing the film.
I was shocked that he had seen, well, because I
Yeah,
guess we were in Berlin at the same time, right?
yeah, yeah,
Last year, and he had seen
and,
something about the film.
yeah. And
Um,
and this is the power of networking. This is why
right.
this is why we need to show up at these things, right? Because
But the funny thing is, sorry, he saw something about the film in Berlin. He
mhm.
did he have any clue that it was attached to you, that you were the executive producer and the producer on it, or
No, I just met him.
oh really? Oh,
I
okay.
I had just met him. I didn't know. We had never met before.
Oh wow, that's great. Because now and then, so now here I am in Cannes, and he was screening that Miriam Makeba documentary here,
Mm-hmm.
um, and he was fantastic. I mean, a lot of people, when you're networking, try to keep things to themselves. I'm not that person. I mean, when I'm running around here with Tony and Joe, and we're running around, if we go pitch somebody, right,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody says, well, this really isn't for me, it's not my bag, right? No,
Mm-hmm.
okay, cool, but we made the connection, right? And then they'll
Mm-hmm.
say, we'll ask them, okay, well, what is it that you're looking for? And they'll say, well, I'm looking for A, B, and C, and you guys have X, Y, and Z. And we'll be like, okay. But then I'll be at a party,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody will say, well, I've got, A, B, and C. And I'm like, oh wait, hold on a second. Let me find this other person at this party, because that's exactly what they're looking for. They told us they were looking for that. So let me hook you up. And that's just something that we do automatically. I don't know if it's something that happens a lot. It's happened here twice, I think. Two people, we've spoken to people, and they're like, "Oh, you should talk to so and so," and so you reach out to them and see how things go. To me, that's people talk a lot about community, but the way in which community works
Mm-hmm.
is you know something that I don't know, or you know someone who I don't know, and then you make those introductions, right? And you make those things happen. That's community. That's how things happen, right? And um, I'm not looking for you to say, oh, give me a credit in the thanks. I mean, special thanks. I'm not. That's not what I'm doing it for. I'm just saying, this struggle is real, right? And
Mm-hmm.
anything that we can do to help one another is a good thing. So when I met with Paul, we chopped it up for a little bit, talked politics, talked Miriam Makeba, South Africa, so on and so forth. The film industry. But then he was real direct, and he turned and he said, "Well, what can I do for you? What do you have that's going on? What are you here for? And what can I do for you?" And we told him, and he was like, "Okay, I know an Italian distributor. They're small, but they're really good. You should reach out to them. I'll make an introduction, blah, 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 so on and so forth." And that's, those are the reasons that make coming to Cannes or EFM, European Film Market, worthwhile. It doesn't have to work out. The chances of things working out are always slim, but the ability to network and make those opportunities grow for something to happen, that's all anyone really can ask for.
Well, that's what we're doing.
Right.
That's exactly what we've done.
And so after 2 days of really really good meetings, we sat down with this other woman that we had met in EFM. I had actually pitched her Legally Drugged. One of the things that she asked is like, I thought you pitched this to me 2 years ago. You still pitching it? And I said, yes, but we've finished the film. Now it's done. She's like, oh, okay. When I was pitching it, we were just going into post production, and it took us a while because we don't have any money. Um, and so we had a nice long conversation where she's from Cologne. Um, and we had a nice hour and 15-minute, long conversation with her about what's going on, and I sent her some stuff, and I'm hoping to hear back. And so the funny thing is that the next day, in the booth next to her, I meet with this Australian guy who I had mentioned earlier, who and Tony said, let's not walk past this woman's booth. Let's walk around and go to the Australian guy. So we walked around and we're sitting, and she gets up and she walks past and she sees us talking to him. And it turns out that's her competitor. So she was like, all in good fun, nothing serious. But she was like, how you gonna talk to my competitor? You know what I mean? Blah, 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 so on and so forth. So um it was all like,
Mhm.
nothing serious. It was just all in good fun. But it was nice that, we were able to make some connections here.
Yeah. So was there anybody else you talked to on the other end with us doing our own independent distribution, setting up our own independent distribution? Did you meet other people doing anything like that?
Not really. I mean, everybody here is
It's on the hustle.
yeah, they hustling for, financing,
Mhm.
distribution, sales, that all that. They're all
Yeah.
looking for that. So
So our position this year is different because we have a solution. You know,
right,
we
right.
have we have a tenable solution, right?
I
Which
mean, I think the thing I like about what we're doing is that that's always been my sort of attitude with things in terms of doing my projects. I
Mhm.
start my projects, and I'm my pitch has always been, um, if I this is going to get done. It's just a matter of when it's going to get done. So my pitch has always been, if you come on board and we work together, well,
Right.
then we go from being the local to the express, and we get to our destination that much sooner, that much quicker, and that much faster, right? And so that's the that's the bag. That's the thing that I've been using to try and move forward in this business. You already have a plan. It's already happening,
Mhm.
right? And people have to jump on board. You know, um, that's I don't know if it's working. You know what I mean? In comparison to anything else, but I always feel like when
Mhm.
you're starting to do something like what we're doing with Artini, when you
Mhm.
start to have forward motion, then people look at you differently because you're not waiting around for them,
Right.
right? You're not waiting for something to happen. You're making something happen, right?
Yeah.
And it's odd because I just finished a book. I'd actually written a script called Aftermath. It's a sci-fi novel, it's a sci-fi novel, but originally it was a script. And when I finished the script, it was 35,000 words. And so I called up my friend Yusuf, who's my co-writer on Spirits of Coney Island. And I said to him, how long is a novel? He was like 70,000 words. So I took the script and just made it into a novel. Well, my niece, who works in publishing or has worked in publishing, I was talking to her about trying to get an agent, trying to get published, and so on and so forth, trying that sort of that uh, IP approach, where in other words, I have a novel, I wanted
Mhm.
to create a graphic novel out of it. It's going to be a
Mhm.
film, that kind of thing. And she was saying to me that you're probably better off self-publishing. Here's the new thing
Mhm.
with publishing is that the publishers don't want to sign anybody now. They don't want to sign anybody brand new. They would rather sign you. So in the past, if you self-publish something, that was like the death nail, right? It was like, we don't want to know you because you self-published something. Now it's the complete opposite. If you
But you
publish,
know what it
if
is?
you self-publish something and you sell 10,000 copies, now Random House wants to jump on board, right?
But you
Now
know
they
what
want to
that is?
sign you
You know what
because
that
you're a
is?
proven entity,
That's the MC Hammer effect.
right?
Remember, before MC Hammer got a record deal, he sold 1 million records out of his car truck, right?
But that's like a
That's what,
DIY hip hop punk thing. Master
right?
P, same way. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
but the
Um,
same thing happened with. I mean, back in the back when the jazz cats in the '50s started they started recording their own music and they started setting up record companies, right? The only thing they couldn't get was distribution, right?
Right.
So they were still to by the fact that they had all these records. People wanted this stuff, but they got locked out of distribution.
Right.
Now with the internet that changes a little bit, because we're still dealing with a network that somebody else controls. It's not a public
Well,
utility.
the choke point has changed. The choke point used to be
Mhm.
distribution, right?
Mhm.
And distribution also meant if you managed to get distribution, so signed to a label, signed to a publisher, signed to a distribution company, right? In terms of film, that distribution meant marketing and distribution, right? Now, that's no longer the case, right?
Mhm.
Distribution is completely available to anyone and everybody who wants it. What's not available to everybody and anybody who needs it is the marketing dollars and the marketing and getting people um, to recognize that you have something, right? Which is the reason why a lot of in the last just in this year alone. So I think it's A24 is putting out a film that was made by a 20-year-old kid um, that's coming to theaters. But why? Because he had a huge YouTube presence, right? Markiplier, who did his film Iron Lung, also um, huge 30 million uh, YouTube subscribers. So those people have proved themselves in their distribution, and now you can decide in a
Mhm.
real strange sense if you have a strong enough following, you have a strong enough audience that you can rely on. You don't even need the distribution because distribution really, in the past, distribution was a problem. Like you could not, you know, in the past, making records meant
Yeah.
having going to the record plant, putting them in boxes, driving them to record stores, keeping track of who got what, where, and when, and selling them, and then also marketing. That's no longer the case. We live in a digital world now where, I could send you my film by just sending you a quick link. So the
Yeah.
distribution is not the problem. The problem is the marketing dollars. The problem is
Yeah.
how to reach people and find the audience. That is the hurdle. That is the difficulty. So now
Yeah.
distribution has sort of been split between marketing and distribution. Because now the big thing now is like you see there are these new articles that are coming up where people are talking about creating these viral marketing moments to
Mhm.
break bans or books or films, and that's where things get difficult.
Yeah. 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 It's difficult, but it's not insurmountable. You
It's not
know.
impossible. It's not
I mean,
impossible. It-
like
the difficulty here, right? My argument here is that filmmakers who make films, right? And I'm making that distinction. The people who make films are having to take on more and more responsibility. And I'm concerned, and I know for a fact that the more you spend time trying to find an audience, is less time you spend making actual films.
yeah,
And
but that's why we need teams. That's why we need
right,
to. That's why
but
we
I'm
need.
saying even if you like, so the
We
distribution aspect with Artini is there. Now we
infrastructure.
need to work with now we need to work with the marketing aspect, right? Where we have to beat the street.
Yeah, yeah, we have to develop the infrastructure. We have to find people who can help us to do that.
Right,
You know,
right.
there's
But then that goes back to what you were speaking about earlier, where so many people are on these antidepressants and on these antipsychotic drugs, right? That um, and people aren't probably not aware of the side effects of these drugs,
mhm.
and so there isn't a sort of there's mass use, but not mass awareness as to the side
Yeah,
effects of that use, right?
and this is where legally drug comes in, right?
Right.
Because we have an audience that's waiting for it, and the question is how we get to that audience. Now we have a plan. We've already drawn out a plan. Now we have to do is follow that plan. One place a week. There's all of these. There's these conferences like the library conferences. These conferences where people take content in order to get them in the libraries. They go to events where people, like universities, have film clubs. Right. There's all of these different non-traditional marketing opportunities that are out here that we're going to have to mine in order to build an audience, right? You know, it's really important that we build this audience. And right now is a perfect time because of this discussion around SSDI, antidepressant, sleeping pills. And
Yeah, but it's like these things are prevalent. People don't realize how prevalent they are. This is another one of my, I have another axe to grind in terms of, when you're pitching things, people like to say, well, we have to give the audience what they want. Well, the audience doesn't know what it wants. You know what I mean? Like, we've made a film about the detrimental effects of antidepressants and antipsychotics. We all know that these things are handed out like candy during Halloween, and yet people don't know. That's an audience that doesn't know that it wants this film. It doesn't know it. So for people to go around saying, "Well, you got to give the audience what it wants," but the audience doesn't know what it wants. In We're being real filmmakers in that sense. We're being real artists in that sense, in that we see we're pulling back from society, seeing what's going on, and then responding, and then bringing that response brings attention to um, the problems that we see because we pulled back and got perspective on it. The people
yeah,
who are taking these drugs, the community that is taking these drugs, and when I say the community, it's not just the people taking the drugs, but the folks who live with those folks who have to take those drugs, right? Um, it's a larger community. They don't know that they want to see a film like this. They don't know what the dangers are and how people are reacting to some of these drugs. And again, I'm not saying that nobody should take antidepressants and antipsychotics, but it just seems like the default thing where you
yeah,
talk to somebody and then it's like, okay, well, here, take
yeah.
some Zoloft or take some Paxil or whatever, or lithium or, what any number of these other drugs. So again, you know, it's up to us to let the audience know what it wants because the audience doesn't know what it wants. It doesn't know what it wants. It never did. It never will.
Hmm. Yeah. So, what's your next move? You're coming back here,
I'll
and
be back. I'm
coming
leaving
back.
on Sunday.
Yeah.
Um, I'll be leaving France on Sunday. Um, I'm a little worried because when we got here, I was flipping through French television and I saw like six channels all talking about hantavirus. Now, I don't speak French. I understand Spanish. There's some similarities, so I was able to tease out some things, and it seemed like there were flights with folks having hantavirus. Now, what's really weird is that my mom used to say to us, um, like if you were in a place that had mice or rats or whatever, and you saw mouse shit, rat shit, she'd be like, "Be careful, you could get hantavirus." That's what I know about hantavirus, right? And now
Hmm.
it's a thing. It's a thing. Well, I don't know what the result is, but there was a flight that was flying from Air France flight coming from Paris, supposed to land in Detroit, and the United States government denied it a chance to land.
Hmm.
Now, the rumor is that somebody on that flight is sick with Ebola, and they forced it to land in Canada.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know what the outcome was. I heard about that last night. I don't know. I haven't heard what's the deal
I
is, but
haven't heard a word. Yeah. Yeah. I haven't heard.
I know that I. So the funny thing is, like, I
Hmm.
came here a couple of weeks before I came here. My dad calls me. He had been calling me three times, and he calls me, catches me on the phone, and I'm like, he says to me, "What's going on? I've been calling you, and you haven't picked up. You haven't even called me back." I said, "Dad, I've been real busy. I'm trying to get ready for Cannes." And he's like, "Oh, you going to Cannes?" I said, "Yeah." So he said, "Can I go?" And I was like, "Yeah, you could go, but I can't hang out with you. You know what I mean?" So he was like,
Hmm.
"Nah, that's cool." So we came and it was fantastic. He got to turn 80. His birthday was on Tuesday. We got here on Monday. His birthday was Tuesday, and we got to celebrate his birthday on the Croisette here in Cannes. But my father has been fighting a serious cold ever since he got off that plane. ever since he got off that plane. So I'm a little nervous about flying back. Um,
Well,
Before I
they have,
leave, I may go to a pharmacy and grab some K95 masks
yeah,
um, to
but
put
it,
on for the
but it,
flight.
they haven't really found a human to human transmission yet. It
They-
does. It doesn't. It hasn't mutated so far that we know of.
Right,
Let's,
that we know of. But then the thing is, like, this is the same thing happened with COVID, right? Like, what we know of, right? And then we find out after the
right,
fact. But the thing too is that you know, we live in a world that is full of people that don't believe in science, and then on
right.
top of that, they're paranoid, right? So instead of there has to be some sort of protocol for if you feel that somebody might be sick on that plane coming in
Mm-hmm,
from Paris on Air France and it's landing in Detroit,
mm-hmm,
there has to be some sort of mechanism by which we could
mm-hmm.
let that plane land and either quarantine those people or do something to make sure that we're handling things responsibility. But to tell people to be like, nah, fuck off, we don't want you here. That's absolutely ridiculous. Now you've let's just say for argument's sake, there's no issue with that plane. You just stranded a bunch of folks. You know what I mean? And like
Well,
I imagine myself on that plane. I have enough money to get here, bro. I can't land in Quebec and be looking for a hotel room. I'm gonna be homeless in Quebec. It's like, um,
well, it's bus tour runs.
yeah, I guess I mean, thank goodness it's Quebec, so there's I live in New York right now, so it's not too
Canada.
far, but
Yeah.
um,
So
yeah,
anyway, um, so what we basically talked about is the collapse of the old wait to be discovered model, right? This rise of filmmaker controlled distribution ecosystems and the importance of building communities, not just audiences, right? It's really about building a community that wants to see this kind of work, right? To get them not only to come to see our film, but to really become curious about independent film work. I mean, like I turn on I turn on somebody. My son called me about a film yesterday called "Is God Is" that I hadn't heard anything about, and I'm going to go see it. It's in the horror. It's in the horror true crime genre, which is something that we're like cinema seems to circle around that, you know. But there are people, when I first started Blacklight Film Festival back in the 80s, the thing that I learned when I did a survey, like we did a Black Film Festival, and I did a survey because there was lines around the corner, and I had to do these by hand. I said, I need to ask these people. And I started asking people, like, when was the last time you went to a film? Over 80% of those people hadn't gone to see a film in 3 or 4 months. And when you ask why,
around what time was this?
this is an 82, right? Now I'm talking about community people, right? When we did our festival, we didn't go for a cinephile audience. We went for a general audience. We distributed our materials in barbershops, beauty parlors, pool halls,
Right.
barbecue joints, and that's who turned up. And it turned out that the majority of these people didn't go to the movies because there was nothing there for them. A lot of them didn't like science fiction. A lot of them wanted to see things that were the type of films we were showing, right?
But the
And
thing
and
is, like, are is anybody reaching out to them to
well,
consider them, right? So the thing is, like,
yes,
you're talking about barbershops and beauty salons and pool
yeah,
halls. How
that's what
many
we
mainstream films are
they
reaching out to
they
barbershops,
they
beauty
use
salons, and pool halls?
they use radio with stereotypical ads
Right.
to pull people
Which,
to you know.
but it's not targeted, right? It's just
Oh
not
yeah,
targeted.
There were back when there was a lot of film ads on the radio. Oh,
Right.
they were definitely targeted towards Black community. I mean, I can get you like a full 2 hours of like recordings of radio recordings advertising films. Everything from Willie Dynamite to Shaft. They use radio a lot because one, it was cheap, and two, people were
Right.
religiously on the radio back then. Television was people thought, every time something new comes along, they think it's going to destroy something else. It
Right.
doesn't, right?
No.
Television didn't destroy radio. Radio didn't. They said movies were going to destroy theaters. Photography was going to was going to destroy portraiture. You know, what it did
Well,
is
it's,
it.
there's this uh, thinker. I call him a thinker. Nicholas Taleb Nassim, who says that the longer something's around, the longer it will remain.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know what I
There,
mean? Of
there
course,
is.
new things come along, and but that doesn't replace the older things. I mean, this was the argument in 2020, right? When everybody was like, "Oh, the theatrical experience is over." You know what I mean? Meanwhile, I can
Hmm.
take you right now out onto the Quaset, right? And I'll
Hmm.
show you people who have come down to the Quaset dressed in tuxedos, dressed in nice dresses, right? Because it's a premiere, and Cannes has a rule where you got to get all spiffy, and they're standing there holding a sign saying, "Do you have a ticket for this show?" Right? Do you have a ticket for this show? People want to come to the movies. They just, there's a hunger for it. You just have to reach those people, right?
Hmm.
Um, so it's an interesting. Uh, um, it was an interesting trip. I'm glad we came. Outside of making the introductions, we also learned a bunch of different things. Another thing I learned, which I did another video about, is that, you know, in the U.S., a lot of people in Los Angeles, New York, and Georgia, which are sort of like, cinema hubs, are talking about how um, production's leaving to go overseas, right? Well, I'm overseas right now, right? And I went to a panel on tax incentives and tax rebates for filmmakers to come to other countries. And there was a German official who was part of the film commission in Germany talking about how he had spoken to German crew members about how they can't pay the mortgage, they can't send their kids to school, they can't maintain the lifestyle in which they've become accustomed to. They don't have any more job security, right? So in the U.S., we're thinking, well, they're going off to shoot in Germany because they got a tax break, and it's like in Germany, there's no work, and there's no work in New York, and there's no work in France, and there's no work in Spain, and there's no work in a lot of different places. This is a global issue, um, and I think the people who are responsible for it are the people who are in charge, the CEOs. Right? They're the ones who have destroyed this whole industry. Like I said in my video on Instagram, uh, you can they, they burn the house down and they're running out with a bag full of money and leaving the rest of us, to choke on the smoke. Um, and it's absolutely ridiculous. So we're really at a serious crossroads here in terms of the old way that things were done and the new alternatives that need to be explored if this industry is going to survive. And I think that we're on the cusp of that with legally drugged and with Artini. Let's see where it goes. Now, my mother used to say uh, that if you too early on something and you break down the door, what happens is you break down the door, you hurt your shoulder, you fall down on top of the door, and everybody comes running up on top of you. You know what I mean?
That's
Um,
yeah, that's how it works. I mean, but
yeah.
that's
But hey, the thing is to keep experimenting and trying
yeah,
new things, and I
and
think that we're in a good place.
I mean that's how it works. But it doesn't have to work against you. There's a
Doesn't
way.
have to work against you. You know what I mean? Look, other people are going to benefit coming from behind you, right? But that's
Right.
not the point. The point is that you find a new way to do things. I'm listen. I'm all for everybody benefiting from the things that I'm learning here. That's why I do my little videos, my little reels on Instagram. I'm letting folks know what's going on here, how I see it, right? And hoping that if enough people can if that can benefit enough people, then maybe somebody can come up with an alternative. I'm looking for it. We're living in times of chaos, and for me, I'm not afraid of chaos. Um, I know that there's always opportunity inside that chaos. And the question is, where is it? You got to be open to it. And then,
Mhm.
a lot of it is damn just dumb luck. Are you in the right place at the right time?
Back
Um,
back to funkadelic, man. Free your mind and your ass will follow. You have
yeah.
to be.
And so, but the thing too is that, like, coming to Cannes, it's an expense, but it's necessary because you can't make something happen by
Yeah,
sitting at home. You got to get out. You got
yeah,
to keep it moving.
yeah. But this is an issue I've been talking about forever since I started the festival back in '82. When I would come to these things, and I didn't see anybody, I didn't see any American filmmakers. I'd be one of the few Americans there, and I'm like, and
Or
there's
here at Cannes.
at Cannes, at all of the markets, and at Cannes, right? At Cannes, there was a stronger African presence there because of because because at that point the African film industry was like rising in the '80s, right? And the
Right.
Ministry of Corporation had an active relationship with African filmmakers and African governments to produce francophone African films.
It's also
So
proximity. It's literally across the damn Mediterranean. You
yeah,
know?
yeah, hey, go down to Suda, go across, you're in Morocco. You're an African, then
Yeah.
it's
So,
it's a pathway. So yeah, so it's
but that's it. But you bring up something else, right? That I wanted to talk about, and that is that, like, there's there are all of these programs or incentives for folks who are from the diaspora in Africa and in the diaspora. But when you say that you're an American, all of a
mhm,
sudden those
mhm.
things dry up, right? Because we have a Hollywood system that is supposed to support
Yeah.
us, but doesn't support us. And so,
Well,
in a certain sense, we are sort of like double
well,
orphaned in that way, right? Like, we
well,
can't,
see,
we're part of the diaspora, but because we're Americans, we're not a part of the diaspora. But
before wait a minute, before my son was born, I met somebody from the EU, and she saw my passport, and she gave her sympathies for us having elected George W. Bush president. I said, well, that brings up something. I'd like to become a cultural refugee because you have all of these great incentives for like filmmakers, right? We're spending our money going to Iraq, um, but I want to be a cultural refugee. I want to be, like I'm not part of it. I've never been part of it. Historically, I haven't been part of it.
right, yeah,
So why do I get X for what? I suffer for. I'm a victim of the same thing. I'm a victim
right.
of insanism, just
But
like.
because I think that because the world itself, like, uh, well, these colonized countries, right? The colonizers, right? They want to try to make up for what they did. So they'll have, they're going to try and help African filmmakers or Arab filmmakers or indigenous filmmakers,
Kind
and
of.
yeah, well, it's a lot of
Yeah, yeah,
yin yang,
yeah.
but they only see colonialism and only define colonialism as being something that is external,
Right.
right? They don't see that colonialism can also be internal, right?
Mhm.
And so uh, they think immediately that American filmmakers of color, that we got it, like, like we Michael fucking Bay, right? And it ain't like that. You know what I mean? I mean, we're just as marginalized as everyone else, except we're marginalized in an internal sense as opposed to, well, both externally and internally, right? I
Well,
mean,
this year, this is the age of erasure. Since January 2025, that's the age of erasure, but it doesn't matter
well,
because
supposedly there was one woman that we ran into here early on who was saying that, uh, all the distributors here uh, are looking for things in the African diaspora, things in Latin America, things in Asia, and the Dominicans have a saying, "Dike, dike." That means so they say, and
so
so I'm gonna take that with a grain of salt.
yeah,
But maybe we're the flavor of the month now, or maybe they are the flavor of the month because we don't really benefit from that.
yeah,
And that's a strange thing, and that's something that it's for a really long time, right? I have wanted to do a film series in the United States called American Third Cinema, and
Hmm.
find films and filmmakers who were third cinema filmmakers and made third cinema films within the belly of the empire, right? And so, for those who don't know, third cinema, what's based on is a concept that's based on two Argentinian filmmakers who had written an essay called "Towards the Third Cinema." Solanas and Hetino. They were two filmmakers who wrote this essay. They define first cinema as Hollywood capitalist cinema, second cinema as European auteur cinema, and third cinema coming from the third world, dealing with revolutionary struggles and trying to help people extricate themselves from the colonial condition. And
Hmm.
so everybody always thinks of third cinema filmmakers as coming from the third world. But again, we have our own third cinema filmmakers from within the United States
That's the
who
whole
are
LA rebellion. That's the whole LA rebellion.
right.
That's Moss Burnett. You know,
Right.
that's
I count Melvin Van Peebles,
yeah,
Sweetback's badass song among third
yeah.
cinema, right? My own
Yeah.
film, Machetero, is also third cinema, right? Um, there are other filmmakers. There's folks like M2 Megant who
Mhm.
is actively trying to do people like Dennis Leroy Kangley, who did a film called As an Act of Protest that played at Sundance in '92, also third cinema, right? Um, but that's an internal third cinema, right?
Yeah.
That's a it's not an external third cinema, because we're dealing with both the external effects of colonialism and the internal effects of colonialism. So
So so we
there's
got
layers to this shit, as they say in the streets. There's layers to this shit.
there's layers, and the next layer is we're going to be doing we're going to be setting up screenings in Chicago for Legally Drugged, and working on that now. You're going to come out when we
Yep.
set up screening. And I'm going to let people know. I'm going to write about it on Substack. We're going to, which is turning out to be a very very robust platform. I'm starting to hear a lot of different things about it, but it's working for me right now. So I'm going to work with while
Right.
it's working, right. So, um, but so people should look forward to that. The film is also going to be pay per view on blackness.tv. Um, you can join now if you want to because we need the support. Um,
Right.
the film is going to be on blackness.tv after we work out what we're doing with Artini, and so that'll be either be end of August or end of September. But I just put it here in the chat section. So in case people want to check out blackness.tv, we've still got a lot of work. We've got a lot of work to do, but there's content on there now. There's probably content you've never seen. Machetero is on there, and I'm going to be getting a new print of Machetero.
Yeah, we're working on trying to do a 4K sort of upres. We'll get to that as soon as we get back stateside. But
Mhm.
yeah, and hopefully we'll be able to do screening with Machetero while I'm in Chicago as well.
Yeah,
Big Puerto Rican community, big Latino community, big anti-imperialist community in Chicago. So if you fall into any of those categories, keep us on your radar.
yeah,
And to tell you the truth, Legally Drugged is in that is I wouldn't call it third cinema, maybe not, but it's
hmm,
third cinema adjacent. We tried to do we're trying to do something that lets people know what's going on.
yeah,
What you do with that information after the fact is depends on you and your own particular situation.
yeah,
But I don't think a lot of people understand what's going on
yeah,
with Richie's story, and
yeah,
it's an important one.
yeah. And it's also interesting to note that this is a work we did for hire, right? This
Right.
is somebody came to us and said, "Hey, I've got this much money. Can you make a film?" And we said yes. I knew Vagabond, and Vagabond has a crew that he works with all the time. There was what, seven of us every day. What was it? Seven of us, eight of us
Yeah,
every
I
day.
think it was. I think the average was 7. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, seven
No.
people. We had a very, I mean, and it moved almost like clockwork.
Yeah.
Except
I mean, no, we
certain people don't know how to get done before midnight. What a working crew member to death. You know,
I mean,
and
no, we didn't really go over. We didn't really have extremely long days. Our days averaged, I think our days averaged about 10 hours.
about yeah. Well,
Maybe once or twice we did 12, but if we were doing something like extensive, but
yeah,
I think
but
our days, a lot of our days were 8 hours.
yeah, and some were four. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I mean, having a crew that communicates well. People that we brought in a couple of new people. They got broken in really quickly. They had to get ribbed a little bit, but they talking
Yeah,
about
well, I
no
mean,
sir.
the thing about working, look, the film, making a film is hard enough. we
Mhm.
don't we don't we don't need to make it any harder. And the thing is, the reason I work with the same people over and over again is because we have a shorthand. We have a great admiration and respect, not just respect but admiration for each other and each other's work, and we support each other, 1,000%. And we've been in some tight spots, and we know how to get out of them, right? And we know how to get out of them creatively. And so but the other thing too that we do is we have fun. You know,
We got the whole
this shit is a lot of work, bro. If you ain't having fun, man, I mean,
the whole Catholic Church archdiocese was and barred us from all of the
from
Catholic
every from
seminaries.
every single Catholic archdiocese cemetery in like 3 states. You know,
If they
don't
turn
worry,
up,
don't worry. They're in the no thanks and the credit for legally drugged, bro. You know,
but
I know,
but
but the sad part is that a lot of low budget independent films, um, they they don't have a well oiled machine like we do. So we get painted with the same brush that they do, not realizing that if you tell me that you want me here, I can only be here for 6 hours and I can only be in this corner. I'm only be in that corner and I'm gonna be out of there in 5.5 or 5 hours and 45 minutes. I'm not gonna go beyond my 6 hours. That's not what I do.
yeah,
I define myself as a professional amateur, right? A professional in that I know when to show up, I know when to leave, not overstay my welcome, get what I need to get done. But at the same time, I'm an amateur in that I'm keeping my eye out and open for something new and fresh and new ways of doing things. So I got that term from Jim Jarmusch. He calls himself a professional amateur. There's a million ways to make a movie. A million ways. There's as many ways to make a film as there are filmmakers making films. So run with that and fuck all this Hollywood bullshit, bro. They make movies the way they do because it works for them. It doesn't have to work for you. And if it doesn't work for you, then find the way that does.
okay. And on that note, we've done exactly 1 hour. Uh,
Cool.
okay, man. So let's talk when you get
Just in
back.
time because I think they're gonna be doing this karaoke bar thing here at the American Pavilion. So um as
Yeah,
as they used to say on the cartoons, exit stage right.
yeah. Okay. All right, man.
So
Thank you very
all
much.
right, man, Floyd. Take it
Thanks.
easy, bro.
Hey, all you people that are here, please subscribe. And when
Yeah,
I say when I say subscribe, please upgrade because that keeps everything running. We're building a machine here, and we need support. So
right.
thanks
And
very much.
please follow us on social media at
Yeah,
blackness.tv, audiovisual terrorism. On Instagram, it's at audiovisual terrorism.
yeah.
Myself at VGBND, at Floyd Webb on Instagram. All these places you can find us on Facebook, on Instagram, on Blue Sky. Follow us so that we can build our community so that when we do our projects, you'll be informed about them.
Okay. All right, man. Thanks. See you when you get back. Okay. Bye bye.
Peace.